we're going to find out if the new GTE is good enough to drive to satisfy me, as well as save me £5,000 per year. Hello and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. As you probably know, I'm a big fan of the new 8.5 generation Golf GTI, but unfortunately that car is irrelevant to the majority of new car buyers because 60% of new cars are sold to business users and fleets, and company car tax rules push them towards cleaner, lower emission vehicles. Thankfully though, that doesn't just mean full electric vehicles. They can also run hybrids such as the Golf GTE. Now, I've been a fan of this car since it came out in 2015. Every generation since has got better to drive and has had a bigger electric range, and that's most definitely the case with the 8.5 version we have here, because this can now do 98 miles on its electric range, which is loads more than the previous generation car. It's also got 7 horsepower more than the petrol Golf GTI. It's the first for the GT to have more power than the GTI. One downside though is that because of the extra battery, the car weighs 200 kilograms more than the GTI, and so far none of the GTEs have convinced me they're the car for me because they just fall short when it comes to driving dynamics. Well, in today's video we're going to find out if the new GTE is good enough to drive to satisfy me, as well as save me £5,000 per year in company car tax should I choose to run one as my own car. But before we get started by seeing how the new GTE stacks up on paper, let me just remind you guys how you can support the channel. As ever, the easiest way is simply to subscribe. Another way is to sell me your Mark 7 or 7.5 Golf GTI or R. I'm looking for cars with below average mileage, with a few options, with a full service history and completely unmodified. If you've got something that sounds like that, then get in touch with me directly by email, andrew@volkswizard.co.uk. Okay, let's start off then by talking about the price. So this new 8.5 Golf GTE is £40,300 on the road. That's just over £3,000 more than the 204 horsepower hybrid style version that's also in the range without any of the sporty pretensions of the GTE. Now, interestingly, that's a similar amount more than the Mark 8 version that preceded this car, and it's £900 less than the GTE if you want the GTI. And I think that's quite a good value car, but this car's got 2 drivetrains, a bit more power, and it's only £900 more. Okay, let's talk about finance then, because most cars will be financed. If you do a 4-year PCP with 10,000 miles per year and a £9,000 deposit, it's £394.31 per month. Spec-wise, it's pretty much identical to the petrol-powered Golf GTI. The big difference is that you get the 17-inch Richmonds rather than the 18th, and there's no option to upgrade. We'll talk about those later. Obviously, a big difference is under the bonnet. Gone is the 150 horsepower 1.4 petrol engine of the old GT. Now we've got a 1.5 litre with 177 horsepower. And there's also a 115 horsepower electric motor. So combined, they produce 272 metric horsepower. 0 to 60 time, well, this was pretty good for a GTI until quite recently, 6.6 seconds. That's 0.1 of a second quicker than the Mark 8 version. Top speed, 143 miles per hour. That's up from 139 of the Mark 8. Now, things get a little bit stickier. Unladen weight is 1,668 kilograms versus 1,454 of the GTI 265. That's over 200 kilograms heavier. That's the equivalent of carrying 3 average-sized British women. The Golf R, for the record, splits the difference when it comes to weight, which is about 1,550 kilograms. Now the battery, which sits at the back of the car, is up from 13 kilowatts per hour of the Mark 8 to 19.7, and that's had a really big improvement on the electric range, which is really important when it comes to company car tax. So the Mark 8 had a max of 38 miles on electric. The electric range of the new one is 81 miles combined, or 98 miles maximum. That's for city use. The beauty of electric drive is that it really does make a lot of sense if you're in stop-start driving. The MPG is 795.6. Let me just say that again, 795.6. Now that's so high that it kind of makes you think there's something a bit fishy going on here. And what is going on is that when the MPG was tested, the car was running largely on electric mode, and it only ran on petrol mode for a very small proportion of that test. That's why it's so high. So if you use the electric range on this car to its max, i.e. plug in to get it charged up, then you'll not use an awful lot of petrol. But if you run this car on the petrol engine with a depleted battery, then the MPG won't be that brilliant because it's a heavy car with a not particularly efficient engine under the bonnet. CO2 emissions, again, this is where the company car tax savings come in. 8 grams per kilometre. It was 25 on the Mark 8, so it's under a third in one just generation change. Compare that to the GTI, which is going to be somewhere like 160. That means that for the 2025 financial year, the benefit in kind tax for this car is just 5% versus 12% of the old GTE. Now that means £804 per year company car tax for 40% taxpayers versus £1,758 if you were to run a Mark 8 in the 2024-25 financial year. And of course, if you plug in at home, you'll have fuel savings as well. The only fly in the ointment is because the list price and the P11D price are both over £40,000, you now pay
luxury car tax,
which is an extra £410 per year for 5 years from the point that the car's taxed for the second time, which will usually be when it's a year old. Another little negative about the GTE is that the boot capacity comes down from 374 litres of the normal petrol or diesel Golf to just 273 litres. Right, now let's have a closer look at the outside and the inside of the new Golf GTE. Let's start then with the options fitted to this GTE. There's about 5 grand worth of options fitted. So we have the panoramic glass sunroof, we have the black styling pack, we have dynamic chassis control, we have the head-up display, and we have the area view parking system. So this is a very complete spec. Now let's have a look at the styling changes over the previous model. Well, it basically replicates the new Golf GTI, so it's a little bit more aggressive down here. It's not so obvious on this grey because it's lost with all the matte plastic grille, but these fangs are new for the 8.5. We've got the hexagon segment fog lights, just like on the GTI, which are standard for the UK market. They're not standard in other markets. We've got the sleeker headlights with the 8.5 that look a lot better. It takes a bit of time to realise that, but they do look really good. Being a black styling pack, we've lost the blue from the grille. So apart from the badge, it does look like a GTI with a black styling pack now. LED matrix headlights are standard. You get the illuminated Volkswagen logo. But this is, like every other 8.5, just a wheels, bumpers and lights facelift. Looking down the side of the car, we have the charging flap socket here. Now this is exactly where it was on the old car. The big difference now is that we do have a GTE badge on the side of the car. Now with Mark 7 onwards, we've had the dagger badges here, and because this charging flap means that they can't be fitted, the Mark 8 didn't have any badges on the side of it. Now every 8.5 with badges on the side of it, which isn't every model, gets them on the doors just to accommodate the charging flap on the GTE. Good, I've got that out of the way now. Does it look all right? I'm getting used to it the more I see it, but I think only the R looks acceptable to me at the moment. We've got black mirrors because we've got the black styling pack. Let's have a quick look at the brakes. So these, to my eyes, look just like the GTI one, single piston caliper. Annoyingly, bearing in mind blue is the theme of this car, both outside and inside, the calipers are red. We've also got the 17-inch Richmond wheels, which I actually prefer to the diamond cut ones. These are actually standard on the GTI in Germany. As you can see, there's not much room there for the caliper, so this is probably the smallest wheel you can fit. This car's got Bridgestone Turanza T005 tyres, not particularly sporty, 225 45 17. There's no option to upgrade, so if you want to fit 18s, go and find somebody who's got a standard GTI with Richmond who wants to upgrade those, and they'll probably make the GTE look very close to a GTI. Down the side of the car, it's really just like the old one, really. We've got the plastic sill extension, which is matte black on this car. Vented discs on the back, but nothing really to talk about there. And then at the back, we've got the new LED rear lights that look a little bit more modern than the old car, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. What is different is that we've lost now the silver trims from the rear bumper, which sort of look like fake exhaust, and now we've just got like a little sort of weird diffuser, there's no exhaust pipes or anything. Okay, now let's have a look inside the new GTE. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, blue is the theme of the GTE, and that continues inside the car. So where we'd have red on the GTI, we've got blue here. So the interior is a bit of an amalgam of the GTI interior and the R interior. We've got the tartan from the GTI, but we've got blue stripes going through it. We've got blue on the backs of seats, blue stitching on the armrest, blue on the steering wheel, blue on the floor mat. So yeah, it's quite a, you know, uplifting interior. And as with the 8.5 GTI, it benefits from the updates that we got towards the end of the Mark 8 run. So we have piano black center console, which looks more expensive for the moment anyway. We have got Alcantara in the door cards as well. And being an 8.5, we've got two big important changes. So we've got the 12.9-inch infotainment system with illuminated sliders, and we've got the new old steering wheel with traditional buttons, which looks and feels a lot more expensive than the old one. I bet it does cost more to manufacture because it's got individual buttons, got pedals on the back of the steering wheel because this is still an automatic car with DSG, got a shifter down here. It's just the same as a normal Golf really. That's the beauty of the GTE. It's not some funny spaceship looking car inside or out. It's just a familiar Golf. We've even got stainless pedals for the sporty look. Sorry, I couldn't avoid saying that. But yeah, in here, if you like the GTI interior or even the R interior, I think it's actually better than the R interior. You'll love it inside the GTE. Let's have a quick look in the boot. The back section is the same as every other car, but there are compromises in the boot. Two compromises really. Firstly, you do have to carry the charging cable around with you if you want to charge away from home anyway. So that takes up room. That's one for charging with a 3-pin plug, and the one we've got connected is for a charging point away from home or at home. Underneath the boot carpet is where we lose 101 litres of space. So here you'd have what's effectively a spare wheel well. The boot floor is completely different, and that's because it houses the 0.7 kilowatt hour battery. Before, I would have said maybe this is too much of a compromise over the normal car, but because that battery now is doing so much more work and giving you much more electric range, I think it's well worth it. But does all the extra weight from that battery mean there are too many compromises when it comes to the car's dynamics? Well, we'll find out shortly when we go for a drive. Now, let's have a quick look under the bonnet because it is quite different to a Golf GTI under there. So there it is. It's very different to your traditional car under the bonnet. Here we have the 1.5 litre petrol engine, 177 horsepower. And then in between that and the gearbox, we have the electric motor, and all this orange is basically the high tension wiring. This one will run all the way to the back of the car to the battery. And yeah, it's very, very complicated, and how these cars will be valued as they age, I do not know, because obviously the battery has a finite life, unlike say a GTI, where as long as the petrol engine is working fine, it'll last indefinitely. But we can worry about that in a few years. Let's find out now if all this extra weight and complexity means that the GTE does not drive well enough to satisfy my needs. Well, welcome to the new 8.5 generation Golf GTE. We're driving in purely electric mode now, which is, if you've never experienced before, it's very, very impressive. There is nothing wrong with the way electric cars drive, or even hybrid cars running on electric. Interestingly, the mode button, which normally lets you do race and comfort and all that, in this car goes to the E mode or hybrid option on this screen. And if you want the proper driving modes, you have to press the button on the top of the infotainment screen. That gives you something more familiar. This car is equipped with DCC dynamic chassis control. So let's beef it all up, because the main intention of this test drive is to see if this car can be sporty. Once you're done with that, you might want to actually have a look at some of the electric options on the infotainment system, because there's a lot there. So if you look at charging, we've got 25 miles left. That says 43% of the range. That's a bit less than is suggested by the stats, but this car's been used for testing today, so it's going to be used pretty hard. The old GTE, when you drive that gently, it does 25 miles. I drove it from where I live in Warwickshire to where I used to work in Birmingham, 25 miles exactly. Literally on the road where I work, it started to run the petrol engine. Up to that point, it had done pretty much 25 miles on electric. So this car's got 43% left, but it's still got 25 miles, and I bet they're realistic miles. It's just kicked the engine in now. So we've got the 1.5 engine with 177 horsepower as opposed to the old 1.4 with 150. So when you're running just on petrol, you've got an engine more suited to the weight of this car than the old one. But if you charge at home, there's no reason why you won't have a lot of battery assistance like we have now, and it feels pretty punchy. Okay, so let's have a good look at the driving modes then. So into mode, and let's go into sport. So we've got 272 horsepower with the engine and the battery motor combined. I think that's enough really for most people. The question is, does it feel sporty? The old GTE on passive dampers anyway was a little bit wallowy. And this seems to feel a bit pointier, and it still seems to have decent ride quality in sport. As I said, we've got DCC, so if you want ultimate waft, the potential is there. The only concern I have over this car's dynamics is shared with the Golf GTI, and that's the brakes. They're quite small for a car of this weight and performance, and this car weighs 200 kilograms more than the GTI. Right then, we need to head to my little test route that I test all my cars on, because this Volkswagen launch event is actually close to where I live, which is very convenient. So it means I can test different cars on the same roads. Luckily it's dry today, and hopefully come up with conclusions pretty quickly, because we do not have long with the cars. We haven't got the VAQ diff with this car, we've just got electronics to help us put the power down, so let's just hoof it and see what happens. Yes, quite a bit of slip and quite a bit of movement to the left then. It doesn't sound bad though, even though we don't have any visible exhausts. So we're in sport mode now. This is my benchmark corner, and yeah, there's a lot of the initial roll, but once it hunkers down, it feels pretty damn good. These 8s and 8.5s with DCC do feel magical in corners. I haven't really worked out why. It's almost like they're pushing back against you, and that's a tricky corner there as well. It did feel slightly like it's got 200 kilograms more than a Golf GTI. I'll tell you what, let's just crank up the DCC to the max, and it would be only fair to do that. Everything else is in sports, apart from the cruise control. We can forgive that. Okay, let's see what it can do. We've got paddles as well. Right then, 60 mile an hour speed limit. Let's see if we can stick to it. Why does it sound so good? It doesn't even sound fake. So 60 as we turn in here, and it's pretty easy. It doesn't seem to lurch too badly into corners. Okay, fourth gear now, and yep, this is the tricky one. Fourth gear still. Let's just get over to the right a bit. Turn in. 60 miles an hour. That's pretty damn good. It feels lovely when it's loaded up, and this is a tricky off camber one. Yeah, 54. So it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. It definitely feels better than the Mark 8 I drove a few years ago, and that's probably to do with the fact we've got the clever DCC and its many different modes. And when you finish with that, you can waft away almost silently in electric mode. It is quite addictive, this car. I think while we're at it, let's just try it in fully electric mode and see if we can have some fun. So that's mode, E mode. Doesn't engage the petrol engine. I think we've got 100 and something horsepower, just purely electric. Ooh. brake pedal is a bit odd. If I had to pick a dynamic flaw for this car, it would be the feel of the pedal. Over this hollow, that was pretty good. Well, I'd love to spend a bit more time with the Golf GTE than I've had available today, but I think I've spent enough time with it to get to know its dynamics, and they are pretty good. I'm not sure whether they're good enough for me, because I expect GTI levels of driving dynamics and it doesn't quite deliver that, but it's pretty damn close, and it's probably closer for the fact it's got dynamic chassis control, which is under 800 pounds, and I think it's really important with a car with all this extra weight. So yeah, suspension wise, it's good. I was a bit disappointed with the performance, but then it's only got 7 horsepower more than the GTI, which is just about fast enough now with 265 horsepower, and it's got quite a bit more weight. But I think for most people, especially the company car in the UK where you can't go that fast anyway, I think the performance is adequate. The biggest dynamic failing, and one that I'd completely forgotten about, was the brake pedal feel. It feels like the pads haven't bedded into the discs. Now that's a possibility. The car's only done 400 miles, but when they're new, they don't really take a lot of bedding in. It's probably more to do with the fact that this is a hybrid car, and behind those normal looking brake discs, there's a lot of technology recuperating the energy that's normally lost from braking. You could probably get used to it, but yeah, it's definitely not as good as the GTI. But I think for most people, especially bearing in mind you can save £5 a year on company car tax if you're a 40% taxpayer, it's quite a good car, and you can spend that £5 you save on a nice second-hand Mark 5 Golf GTI to get your proper GTI thrills. And as a daily car, this is actually really, really good. Loads of electric range. Yeah, it's how hybrids should have always been. As ever, guys, thanks for watching this Volkswagen video. Keep subscribing, keep commenting, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.